Hi, brother. How you doing?
I'm good. Just trying to stay as productive as I can. Nothing too crazy. How about you?
Same here, brother. I'm doing good, man. Since the last time we talked, same o, same o. But before we dive in deep, I wanted to talk about your film school, your film class. You want to talk about that before we get in deep?
Yeah, sure. So, basically, we have a online acting school called the Acting Lab, and it's kind of designed to teach young actors not only the craft of acting, but the business of acting as well. And our main goal right now is to kind of, in a very gate-kept industry, kind of bring some of it to light a little bit. And we have a second group, the locker room, that's kind of more of like a social club for actors to come to learn little bits of bite-sized insight about the craft. And then the acting lab is like our more specialized school, basically.
Nice, nice. And is it how much? I looked at it for a quick second. Is it free? It looked like.
So we have a free group and then we have a paid group. So our free group is the locker room, and we basically give out free acting feedback videos. So a lot of people find us through YouTube, where I will sometimes roast my own past acting, and they'll be like, "Ooh, I would love if you would do that, but for me." And so we give free videos where basically it's like I call it a lo-fi YouTube video kind of, and then an acting timeline. And then, if they so choose, if they want more personalized help from me, then they could join our acting lab, which right now is at 99 a month, but eventually we're gonna raise that price in a couple of months. So depending on when people listen to this, we might have a different price. But yeah, it's just designed to kind of combine the craft and business, because I feel like a lot of studios either just do the craft or just do the business. Not a whole lot of them kind of combine both at the same time. So,
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the reasons for this podcast. There's a lot of information on YouTube, but I mean, for you guys to just be, like to give a video out and be like, "Hey, tell me what's wrong with this." That's amazing, man. That's really amazing. You should be very proud of that.
yeah.
All right, let's start back from the beginning though. Now we're gonna go back a little bit. I want go ahead and introduce yourself and your origin story. I want to hear how like this all started. What made you want to be an actor?
Oh gosh, yes. So I'm Tristan Spohn. I have been a professional actor probably for 3.5, 4 years, but I've been acting in total for almost a decade now at this point. Essentially, my origin story was just being a cringy sketch comedy YouTuber back in the day. I never got more than like a couple hundred views, and it was very much so just something I randomly did for fun. And I never thought that that would lead to me becoming an actual actor. I just thought, oh, I got a camera, let me just make random stuff for fun. And from there, I just kind of kept going, and I kind of stumbled into being an actual working actor somewhere along the way. I remember when I was in junior high, my original group of friends, for no real reason, just kind of isolated me. The very first day I tried to sit next to them, they're like, "Oh, you want us? You think we want you to sit next to us?" And so that's when I began my process of self-isolating. And in all of that self-isolation, where I would basically spend every lunch in the library, I never really talked to people, I was very shy, I started writing. And really, I only became an actor because I wanted to bring what I wrote alone in the library to life. And made those videos. My mom saw it was something I liked, and when it came time to enter my junior year of high school, she was like, "Hey, you might want to audition for this performing arts high school in downtown Dallas called Booker T. Washington." And I did. Fell in love with the actual craft of acting, and then just kept going from there. Um, yeah.
You say you stumbled, and before we talk about what you really stumbled into, you had a whole bunch of credits. Murder Made Me Famous, Lone Star Justice, Your Mask Fell Off, FBI. But how did you like stumble to getting to that area, to all of those? You know what I mean?
Oh gosh. Well, Those are very much so, like they're your like micro budget. They go up on investigation discovery kind of channels. So they're like recreations where you don't even have any lines. You just pretend to like fall, or you pretend like you got murdered, or you pretend that you're on it's very like simple. They only pay like $100 for those roles. So it's like it's nothing to write home about. And they're almost all non-union. The kind of investigation discovery channel types of crime shows. But essentially, when I graduated high school, was convinced I was going to go be a famous working film actor by moving to Los Angeles. And to make my parents get the blessing, I agreed to go to community college. And then I got to community college, realized it felt like I was back at freshman year of theater classes in high school. And I very quickly felt like I was growing stagnant in those community college classes. So I dropped out, got a full-time working job, and then from there worked 100% of the time, or was isolated in my apartment and didn't do anything related to acting while I was out there. And so after I had a situation with my car where it was a situation where I could either stay in Los Angeles without a car or move back home with a car, I kind of was forced to buy out my lease, make the big trek back to Dallas, feeling like a failure, feeling like it was impossible for me to ever actually be successful in this industry. And the crazy thing is that the week I bought out my lease is the week I stumbled into my first ever agent in Los Angeles. And I say stumble. What happened is I had put my demo reel up on all of the major platforms, Backstage, Actors Access, casting networks. And my agent just, I guess, was looking for new clients, stumbled on my demo reel, thought that even though it was very raw, there was something special in it enough to request a meeting. So I got very lucky in that. I was in Los Angeles 2 years, had zero traction, got no success. I had submitted to a couple of agents, heard nothing. And it wasn't until I decided to leave that I actually got my agent. So then in Texas, it was still the back and forth of, oh, I failed in Los Angeles, but now I have an agent and now I'm actually getting some auditions. So for a long time, I was kind of twiddling my thumbs, kind of waiting around, assuming that, oh, one of these auditions is going to pop off and then I'm going to do that thing of being the famous, successful actor, right? And my mom had a very serious conversation with me that completely changed my life, where she said, I don't actually think you love acting. I think you're going at this trying to get attention. And I was like, what are you talking about? I've been doing this for like a decade. Actually, I've been doing it a decade now. At that point, I'd been doing it like 3, 4 years. I was like, I went out to LA. What do you mean I don't actually want it? And she was like, you never do it on your own anymore. You used to make videos on your own. You used to just love doing it when no one saw it. And ever since you went to LA and then came back, you're just sitting around waiting for stuff. Like, I wasn't going out and filming anything anymore. I wasn't trying to find local opportunities. I was just doing auditions when they came in and thinking that that was enough. And obviously, I look back at those auditions now, some of the most atrocious acting of my career. I really was not even close to as good as I thought I was. But that conversation with my mom allowed me to actually see that she was right. I wasn't trying. I was sitting around. And I realized that there probably is some truth to, if I truly loved this, I'd be going out of my way more to make this happen. And so I did that. I started auditioning for local community theater plays. I joined a local acting class, which that was crazy, is that, I was trying to be an actor without taking any classes at all. And then from there, I started auditioning on Backstage for local short films in Texas. And all of a sudden, I went from waiting for auditions to now I'm actively improving. Now I'm actively going out. And then I got a camera, started making my own films, making my own scenes again. And so it was very much so a gradual build. It was just I kept auditioning, but because I was now in classes, because I was now ingrained in the Texas film community, I was actually becoming better. And the cool thing about acting. And the thing a lot of actors don't realize in the moment is that you're never auditioning for the role that you're auditioning for. That seems counterintuitive because you would think, well, obviously you are. Why would you audition and not want to book this role? But what I realized is that auditioning is just building reputation, it's just building rapport. And it took me a while to realize, even though I wasn't getting anything that I booked, the same casting directors were calling me in again and again and again because I was being bold, I was taking risks. And it wasn't until years of auditioning and failing and hearing nothing, and then auditioning and failing and hearing nothing, that all of a sudden Stranger Things came into the equation. They asked for me to read for number two, and then I just kind of exploded forward from there. So that was a very long-winded answer, but that's like generally how I went from that to booking such a big role.
No, I loved it. And I definitely want to get to number two, but I do have a question in there. So, what made from all those sketches, and I'm sure you're probably filming every weekend, every other weekend, then you moved to LA. Is that when you started getting these $100 jobs and stuff? And is that what stopped it? Is that like, because now you're like, oh, I'm kind of doing it. So is that what stopped like the creativity of like fun for it?
No, I think so. Some of the $100 gigs were before I went to Los Angeles while I was still
Okay.
in Texas. A couple of the other ones were after I came back to Texas and I got out of that hole of like sitting around waiting for auditions, and I decided to put myself out there and find my own auditions. So those roles, I think Lone Star Justice was in like 2019, I think.
Mhm.
And I remember being so obnoxious on that set, by the way, because I was playing this character whose entire thing was like sobbing uncontrollably when his mom like was killed. And what's funny is I look at that episode now, they used maybe half a second, but I actually started, for whatever reason, sobbing uncontrollably and refusing to pull myself out of it. Like, I don't know what crazy trauma I unlocked, but I bless those directors' heart. They were like trying to work with me, but I was also just I was off the rocker for the entire time they were filming that scene for like an hour straight. I remember back then I was like, I'm such a great actor. I can just be crying for an hour straight, when really it's like so obnoxious. It's a sign I wasn't a good actor because I had to stay in that for an hour to actually like get there. And I was just a nuisance to all of my, co-stars and my director. And bless this one actor who was playing a cop's heart. He would be like trying to comfort me in between takes, and like a newbie beginner actor, I was like, no, 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 I'm holding on to it. I'm gonna use it. Um, anyway, all that to say, I think Murder Made Me Famous was before I went to Los Angeles. Lone Star Justice was after I went to Los Angeles. And honestly, I think that the big shift was going from in Texas, where I was just doing it for fun. I did it all the time at my performing arts high school. And I had a massive ego because when I was in Texas before going to Los Angeles, I had a 100% booking rate. Every single thing I auditioned for in Texas, I immediately booked. And so I kind of got a little bit too big for my britches going to Los Angeles. And I kind of didn't feel like I needed to put a lot of effort in because I was like, oh, I literally book everything I auditioned for. Then, of course, you go to where it's an actually big film market with actually like competitive actors, and that obviously changes. But I think it was a combination of cockiness after the 100% success rate before moving to Los Angeles, and moving to Los Angeles with the assumption that now I'm going to be a working actor and this will be my career. So I shifted from this is what I do for fun to this is what I'm trying to do as a career. And as soon as it becomes a career, it becomes this thing that you become a little too precious about. You become, or I became almost like elitist for no reason, where I was like, I refuse to put my acting into anything that isn't like multi-million-dollar budgets, which is crazy and dumb as an actor with zero experience, zero notable credits to his resume. But then it was a matter of falling back in love with the craft of it instead of caring about like the attention side of it. And it wasn't until I started taking my power back after coming back to Texas that I actually focused on my love of the craft instead of my love of the potential attention that you could get from the craft.
For someone trying to break in or get started or something, what are some of those websites? Like, what would you tell them to do to try to get an agent?
There are a lot of different ways you can answer this because it depends on where the actor is currently at. A lot of actors think they're not as green as they really are, and they think they're ready for an agent way before they're actually ready for an agent. So what I would say is if you're focusing on getting an agent and you've never actually put an effort into learning the craft, you're putting the cart before the horse. You need to be a good enough actor to stand out to an agent in an age where, because of the internet, it's more accessible than ever. And it being more accessible than ever is great because you can do it from anywhere, but it also means anyone is competing. So many actors are competing for those same roles. So I would recommend two things. I'd recommend specifically taking film acting classes because if you're coming at it having only taking theater and film are completely different skill sets. I like to compare it to how pottery has similar forms to watercolor painting, but they're also just completely different types of art. It's the same with theater and film and even commercials. All three of them have similar forms. They have some techniques that can carry over to the other, but they're completely different arts. And so if you're only coming at it from theater, take film acting specific classes. And then from there, in those classes, you need to figure out what is your acting edge. What is the thing that you are best at? What would be your typecast? And once you know what your typecast is, that's when you're ready to market yourself to agents as that typecast. And a lot of actors bristle at that at first because they don't want to be typecast. Like, I want to show that I can do everything. I'm a chameleon. And that's fair, but you don't become a chameleon by just throwing a bunch of random stuff to the wall and seeing what sticks. You become a chameleon when you develop a reputation for one thing. That's the thing people know they're reaching out to you for first. And then now that you have trust, now you get opportunities outside of that typecast. But I like to say it's the illusion of choice. Like, if you give too many people too many options of what you could be considered as, they don't know what to do with you. Versus you give them, I played these two characters better than anything else. Now all of a sudden they know what to call you in for specifically. And the best example of this is Stranger Things was not something I was submitted for. It was something that the casting directors were already thinking of me first for because I was able to demonstrate that that was the thing that was my best skill. I don't know what it says about me that creepy sociopathic bullies is what I do better than anything else, but it was, and they remembered that, and that's how I started to find success and find my niche. And then since then, those same casting directors that know that's my strength, now they're giving me auditions for characters outside of that strength because I built that trust. They now know I'm a great actor. They know what I can do. So now it's just curiosity on, ooh, okay, we know Tristan normally does this, but let's see what he can do with this. And that's how you actually start to break out of that typecast mold. Um, and when it comes to getting your first agent, the reason it's important to know your typecast and to double down on that typecast is because the reason an agent signs you is because they don't currently have an actor like you on their roster. You fill some type of hole that is currently in the actors that they have that opens up a new range of roles that they can submit for, right? So all that to say, you establish your typecast, you double down on that in your agency reach outs, and then from there, it's easy to know what they can do with you immediately from day one. And so not booking, agents are a lot more likely to want to meet with you because my agent, her biggest pet peeve with actors that she's meeting is when they ask her, what kind of roles do you think I could play? I just met you like 10 seconds ago. You should come to me telling me what roles you should play so I can market you that way. I want you to come in knowing who you are and knowing what your strengths are, because otherwise, I'm not going to be able to help you discover that, in time for some of these big auditions to, not to make me look good. I hope that somewhat answers that question.
Yeah, that was really good. And yeah, let's get into so so you didn't go and well, of course you auditioned for Stranger Things, but it wasn't you actively pushing to be on Stranger Things. That was your agent?
Basically, I had auditioned with the casting director many times beforehand. I think I had auditioned like 5 or 6 times for Carmen Cuba, the casting director. And so she already knew me. So it wasn't like my agent was pitching me to her. It was
Okay.
more so she was familiar with me. She had seen me 5 or 6 times already. And when she was starting to cast this role, she was naturally thinking of me. So this is why I tell actors your auditions become your reputation, because every actor has those couple of years before they make it big where everyone in the industry knows who they are, because everyone knows, oh my God, this actor is always doing these incredible auditions. We've just not found the right role for him yet. And so every single time the auditioning process is about figuring out where they can put different actors. Even Brad Pitt probably had a year, 2 years where he was just auditioning. Everyone knew he was going to be this massive success. They just didn't know what that first success would be. That's not to say I'm anywhere near Brad Pitt caliber. I'm just saying that a lot of people think that, oh, you make it after you've gotten your first project, but everyone knows about you way before you book your first project if you're doing it right. Um, so then basically, because my auditions, I was able to show elements of the creepy sociopathic bully. Carmen Cuba was thinking of me when she saw who could I reach out to for number two? You know what? Tristan perfectly captures that. Let's see what he does with it. And then it kind of went from there. And I will say too, I auditioned for Eddie Munson as well, like 6 months
Wh-
beforehand. So it wasn't my first time auditioning for Stranger Things as well.
I was going to ask that. Which one was first? So how many times did you have to go in and audition, and did you meet anybody in the audition once it probably got further or anything?
So this is the crazy part. And by the way, this shattered my entire view on my auditions beforehand, because it took me 2 years of auditioning and I never got a single callback. I never progressed anywhere in the audition process. And then with Stranger Things, I sent in the audition tape. A week later, they booked me. And then a week later, I was flown out. So it wasn't like I had a callback and then I had a chemistry read and then I met the directors and then the showrunners and then the network. It was literally off my audition tape. I was booked and flown out. And it kind of completely changed my view of my auditions beforehand, because I realized just because I didn't get a callback does not actually mean I'm not in high consideration. The fact I didn't get a callback on the role I booked, I think, shows that. Because guess what? The exact same thing happened with FBI 6 months after wrapping Stranger Things. Is I sent in my audition tape. Within like 3 or 4 days, they booked me and then flew me out. So again, it wasn't like I had a callback and then a network read and then, a director meeting. It was just one single audition tape and then I was booked and on set. So just because any actors listening to this have never gotten callbacks before, don't think that means your performances suck or they're not seriously considering you, because you have no idea what those conversations are. Carmen Cuba never gave me a callback. I never progressed with any of the auditions beforehand, and yet she was still considering me high enough to ask for me personally for something. So yeah, no, it was bizarre. Literally single audition and bada boom, bada bang on set. It's crazy.
So you're flying out in that airplane. How do you feel knowing that like you're going to be on the biggest show ever? And like, and then after you film it and it comes out, I'll ask both of these at the same time. How does it feel after it comes out, knowing like forever?
Yeah.
Like I hope to God that you do a million more amazing things. But I mean, Stranger Things will always be one of the biggest shows and always remembered. So how do you feel in the airplane going? And then how do you feel when you see all your episodes?
So it's interesting because this isn't going to be the answer that people, I think, anticipate. Pure terror. Like some of it's kind of excitement, but I would say 1% excited, 99% pure terror. And it's for a couple of reasons. One, this was during the height of the pandemic, which meant we had to do a 5-day quarantine and then we'd be tested for COVID. And if we tested positive, there was a chance we'd be recast. So literally on the airplane, I was I was crazy. I had 3 pairs of gloves on. I had 3 masks on, which probably didn't really do anything to protect me, but I was just like, I'm being as like paranoid, anxious as possible. Anyone that got somewhat close to me on the plane, I just would just immediately just turn away as much as I could. Like I was psychotic. And then during those 5 days as well, um, with the quarantine, it's just obviously I'm prepping the character. Obviously, I'm like trying to watch the show because I had seen the first 2 seasons. I'd never seen the third season, but I binged the entire show 2, 3 times, was able to let that get me excited. But I still, until I filmed my first scene, was terrified that I'd be recast. In fact, it wasn't until halfway through filming it where I got to the point where I'm like, okay, now if I got COVID, they would halt production because I've been way too far in this to be recast now. So it wasn't until I was halfway through I got to breathe a sigh of relief of like, okay, it's not the end of the world if I get COVID because I'm in too much of this for them to recast me at this point. Um, so anyway, all that to say, just pure terror most of the time. And then the blessing is that my first week on set, I didn't have to do anything except give Millie this like really mean look. There's the opening scene of the lab where she wakes up, she's running in and out of the rainbow room. She goes through all of these different doors, but it leads right back to the rainbow room. That whole scene that is maybe 5 minutes took us an entire week and a half to film. But what's great is I got to get all of my nervous energy out of the way. I got to meet everybody, feel kind of safe, feel like I was at home, feel like I was a valuable part of the process. So that then when I got to my more intense scenes where I actually had lines, I'd already gotten the nervous energy out when I was just staring at, Millie essentially. In terms of then at the end of the show, it feels like a fever dream because, I shaved my head. It is to a point I don't even recognize myself in the mirror. It was in a different city for 2 months, so you really almost feel like you're like in this little bubble while you're filming, and then you come back and it's like summer camp is over. What do I do with myself now? And then the fear pops up of, oh my god, that is the biggest show of all time. Have I already peaked? Am I never going to do anything even close to as cool again while being, I was like 21 at the time, just deathly afraid that I would never be successful again. And it actually got to the point for the first time in my life, I had to go into therapy because I got in such a bad mental space. And I was blessed enough that with the Stranger Things money, I could afford it. I know that therapy is a luxury, but I realized that all of my identity was being like wrapped up in this one little show that I wasn't allowed to talk about. And I have all of this fear around, never working in the industry ever again. And this show's not even come out, you know? Um, so what was great is because we weren't allowed to talk about the show, because I wasn't allowed to tell anybody about the show until basically the day that it dropped. I was able to get all of the existential crisis out of the way before the show finally came out, and I was able to have a healthier relationship to it. And then the cool part about it is because again, I didn't recognize myself with the shaved head. I was watching the show as a viewer, not even recognizing that that was me on screen. I'm just like, objectively, I know that that's me, but it just looks so different. I can't intellectually resonate with that person. So it was really trippy watching it back to recognize yourself and not recognize yourself at the exact same time. And then the show comes out, right? There's a lot of positive attention, but the unfortunate side of playing an antagonist character who's entirely against like the sweetheart of the show, because everyone loves Millie. With the positive attention came a lot of very negative attention at the same time. There were a lot of people that weren't able to separate me from my character and would just randomly send me violent threats through Instagram DMs or in like blocked comments on Instagram. I made the mistake one time of like going, I made a post, it was related to Stranger Things. It kind of blew up a little bit. And then I was, of course, obsessed with, oh my God, all of these comments saying I'm a great actor. This is so cool, getting all that dopamine, you know? And I scroll to the bottom and I see view blocked comments. It's different from folded comments now. Folded comments, anyone can go look at them, but blocked comments, only the creator can look at them. And I looked at the blocked comments and decided I'm never looking at blocked comments again, because it'd be things like people saying, I deserve to kill myself. I don't deserve to breathe. I'm a terrible waste of space. I'm an awful human being. All of these like really ruthless things because of a character that I played. And then you go through the hard process of realizing that part of being in the industry is having a lot of people that are just always going to make assumptions about you. And when you play negative characters, as a people pleaser, there's this like desperation to show, wait, no, that's a character. That's not me. I'm not bad. And it was why I'm grateful I, being over 18, was cast as that role, because I can't imagine a young kid having to deal with that kind of attention. And it definitely gave me a lot of empathy for child actors, because me at 21, 22, kind of struggling with all of the negative feedback of the show, I can't imagine how I would have reacted if I did that when I was like 16, 17. So a whole roller coaster of emotions that overall I'm very grateful for. And the biggest surprise that came after the show was randomly going on a public speaking circuit. I think I went to 5 or 6 different schools, like their theater departments, as a public speaker, kind of talking about my journey, talking about how they could get into acting, because a lot of people were inspired by the fact I was able to do it from Texas. Because traditionally, everyone thinks you need to move to Los Angeles, you need to move to New York to have any chance at being successful. So, um, I realized that the value in the success is what it gave other people more than what it gave myself. And what I realized is the reason I got so depressed after is because I was so focused on myself. I'm like, oh my God, what does this mean for me? How can I keep improving? How can I keep growing? When instead, how can I focus on using this as a platform for, positive change in other people, either, you know, around me as like friends and family, or online through like educational acting videos that kind of bring a lot more clarity to a very safeguarded industry. That was a very long answer.
No, it was really good. There was so much in there. So you're actually my second guest, and I thought it was so fitting, since you're two.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
so in the last one, I had a YouTube creator that does fan films and stuff, and we got to talking about nasty comments. And on YouTube, they kind of do the same thing where you could kind of look at the block comments. This is just too harsh. So you have to like look at it. So how do you deal with it besides not reading it? Because to be honest, man, you were like people like Darth Vader. People like the Joker, but you're not supposed to like the bad guys. You know what I mean? And you weren't like a straight villain, but you did a good job at being a bully. And also, your YouTube page got recommended. So I'd watch your videos. And at the first couple, I was like, I don't remember this guy on Stranger Things at all. And I had to like, you're like breaking down the video. So I'm seeing it side by side. And I was like, oh my God, that's him. But you didn't look like him. I'm just going all over. But when you're doing that good, it's hard for people to like kind of think like this is a young adult that is acting, that's just acting what the writers wrote for him. And how do you deal with that when it's just like you doing a really good job? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can only deal with it in a cycle. And what I mean by that is I don't think there's like ever a time where I'm 100% great at it, or 100% I'm like, okay, I can now understand that this just means I'm a great actor or anything like that. I think that there are phases. So maybe you can only deal with it in phases, is better to say, than cycles. But I think that it depends on the platform. I think obviously when it's in relation to my character of number two, I have a different way of dealing with it than like occasionally I do get, hate comments on like my YouTube channel. And the way I deal with those is definitely different. I am now able to see my performance as number two as like, if people hate on that, it's almost always about how much they hate the character. It's almost never about like, oh, they hate my performance. So I know my performance is really strong. And I'm able to
Mhm.
now look at that as, oh, that just means I'm so good. It's impossible for them to tell that that's nothing like me. Like I did such a good job of immersing them into this character that it's hard for them to not blend that reality. However, with YouTube, whenever it's like whenever it's me making the videos and them making comments about like actually me, because I obviously my personality on YouTube isn't 100% like it is in real life, but it is definitely more personal. And dealing with that comes to a matter of me being able to realize everything is just preference, you know? And this has helped me as an actor as well, where I've realized the actor they cast has nothing to do with the actor that did the best performance. It's just who fits the preference that they have in relation to the other actors auditioning or the other actors that have been cast. It has nothing to do with talent after a certain period, because when you get to a certain point in your career, everyone is so good. And leaning into that allows me to not take it so personally, because no one is ever going to be 100% of people's cup of tea. And I think a recent video I made that perfectly encapsulated this is I got a lot of comments that were like, ooh, your voice is so relaxing. I could fall asleep to your voice. You have a future in audiobooks. And in the same video, people start commenting, bro, your voice sucks. It's like, it's so annoying. I hate it. And that's when I realized, like, okay, cool. The people that love my voice will watch. The people that don't, I'm not their cup of tea. And I think being able to realize all of this is just subjective. It has no objective basis. It's just a bunch of opinions. Allows me to realize, well, then if I'm not your cup of tea, go find someone that is your cup of tea. And that helps me not take it as personally, because like it's not. It's just it's people have their own worldview that sometimes either you fit in with or you challenge. And people don't tend to like their worldviews being challenged. So um anyway, that's how I deal with it now. And I'm not 100% there. There are some comments that like perfectly hit on my biggest insecurity, right? Where it's like I read it at the worst possible time, and it's like now I go into a death spiral on the next like couple, not death spiral, doom spiral, the next couple of days, where I'm like, oh my god, maybe I have peaked. I'm never gonna do anything cool again. And it's just a process of kind of trying to remember that I'm more than my acting. I'm more than my YouTube channel. My identity is more nuanced than one thing. And so someone insulting one thing doesn't mean my entire identity is at risk. I think in the past, because acting was like where I got all of my value, anything that challenged my acting skill would make me challenge my own value. And now that I realize I'm more than that, anyone that insults that side of me, I'm like, hey, you maybe don't like that part of me, but I have 12 other parts that I can have confidence in, you know? Um, so that's how I deal with it now.
That's beautiful. That was really good. Yeah. I know you don't have to get into exact numbers because I don't want to talk about exact numbers, but how is it getting paid from a Netflix show? Is it like life changing? And because also streaming, I know is different. If this would have been Friends, you'd be getting paid for the rest of your life. And I don't know, maybe it is like that on streaming. I just don't think it is. So like how, like I said, you don't have to go into exact numbers, but how is it getting paid being on one of the biggest Netflix shows?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. I'm always very transparent about this stuff, because for me, I feel like I'm not going to be someone who's like very precious about that, because I feel like it's important to know what you're getting yourself into. It's life-changing money. in a form, but not in the way people expect. It was life-changing money for me in the sense of I'd never made more than like 1,800 bucks a month. I've always ex- before that show I'd always lived paycheck to paycheck. I never, really made any crazy amount of money, and going from paycheck to paycheck to all of a sudden 20K is sitting in your bank account, like that is life changing. But what's great is before every single one of the projects I've booked where I was able to make a big like amount of money from it, I had a very humbling experience right before it that allowed me to never let my head get too big. For example, when I went to Atlanta for Stranger Things, I told you I had a 5-day quarantine. Um, they had me pay incidentals for the hotel room. So basically, the production obviously they cover the entire hotel room, but you still have to have a credit card on file with the hotel for the incidentals, right? The incidentals wiped my entire bank account. I had $0 after that, which meant my first 5 days in quarantine, I basically had to use this Amazon gift card I'd gotten for Christmas. It was like a $50 Amazon gift card. I placed the order because Amazon's connected to Whole Foods. So I could get a Whole Foods order through this Amazon gift card. And they forgot to actually give me half of my order, which meant the first 5 days, what actually came from Whole Foods was hummus, butter, and these like veggie straws. So basically, I went through the veggie straws night one. The next couple of days, I was just eating hummus out of a spoon as like my food. And it was that thing where I could have asked my mom, hey, I spent all my money on my incidental fees of this hotel. Could you like maybe send me a little money for food? And she would have been very happy to do so. But the other part of my ego was like, I don't want to go to my mommy asking for money when I'm literally in Atlanta filming Stranger Things. Like, how embarrassing is that, right? So I mainly highlight that story to show like I was not like I didn't come from this like super rich background. I didn't have a crap ton of money in my account. I had zero in my account when I was in Atlanta. And to go from that to, like I said, you make 5K a week for streaming shows. And this is where there's a massive difference between streaming and network is I made 5K a week as a recurring guest star on Stranger Things. I was just a one episode guest star on FBI on CBS, and I made 8K a week. So almost double what I made on Stranger Things for a much smaller part with literally completely different residuals. Like the residuals you get from streaming are so minuscule versus network, you get a crap ton of more residuals. Like I think I got almost 10K in residuals from FBI alone to like the maybe 3K from Stranger Things. And that's with me technically being credited in 5 episodes of Stranger Things versus my one episode in streaming. I literally doubled the average per episode on a network show than a streaming show. So anyway, all that to say, in total, like 5K a month is like crazy good, right? But it's not like you're on set for 8, 9 months if you're a recurring guest star. If you're only on set for a couple of months, it's great. It's not like it sets you up for the rest of your life or anything like that. So you still have to be very smart with the way you handle your money. And I think a lot of actors can make the mistake of prematurely leaving the day job because they think once they book that first role, now everything's just going to line up into perfect place, and then they blow through all their money and have to go back to the day job, and then they're basically starting from square zero again. And so I was lucky enough that I had basically a couple of weeks before I booked Stranger Things become the general manager of a wedding venue. And so I was able to go back home and then fulfill my duties as the GM, which meant I got to save a lot of the money that I made. I put it in the S&P 500 like a smart little investor, and was able to kind of not, it became like a cushion. But I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And I really hope that streaming, I feel it's so new. It's still a baby, compared to networks. And I hope they figure that out because we could probably go into a whole hour conversation about that, but I don't feel like it's really fair for the creatives. And yeah, but talking about your role, like Matt, you had a pretty good size, juicy part. How was it acting with Millie? How was it acting with anybody? Like, do you have any, besides how was it acting with them, do you have any little behind the scenes, little fun story?
Yeah, no, I've said this publicly a few times. Matthew Modine is my favorite scene partner I've ever worked with. Matthew Modine is Papa. He's Papa in the show. And he, when the camera was on me, would always go above and beyond to make sure I had everything I needed to have the mental breakdown in the electrocution scene. So they forgot to send me the electrocution scene. That was like the one thing that I was completely unprepared for. So I basically had 2 days after they realized they forgot to send me the scene to get completely off book, make my choices, and be as prepped as I could. And what Matthew did that was so special is he laid into me as Papa whenever it was my close up. He would start like throwing my name around because he knew that would help me get into that space. He would like get very aggressive with the way that he was talking to me in a way that made it very easy to have that authentic mental breakdown. And then you cut to his camera and it's calm, reserved, regular Papa, right? And I said after that, he would be like, "Hey, great job. Hope you don't mind. I wanted to really push you." I was like, "Oh no, that was awesome. Thank you so much for doing that." So it's not like he was doing that and I'm over here being like, "What a dick." I'm so grateful that he did that. And it was very much so something that we agreed to beforehand, where I did tell him, I was like, "Hey, whatever you need, like come at me with it." Right. Um, and I've never had a scene partner changed their performance when it was on my coverage so wildly because they knew that it would give the best possible performance out of me. I've never had someone do that the way that he did. And it helped me realize that acting is more about being a phenomenal scene partner than it is about just doing the scene how you want. And you don't always get those very giving scene partners. There are a lot of scene partners that when the camera's not on them, they're just chilling. They're not giving you as much to work with as you would like. And him going out of his way to do that for me will always be what makes me want to do the same for my scene partners. I don't always have the ability to do that because I will say, me being an unhinged psycho, I'm like yelling at people constantly in my performances. And I do get to this point where I'm like, I can't yell anymore without losing my voice and sounding like Batman. So I've had a couple of times where even though I wanted to give all out for my performance, I could only give like a 7 just because I wasted all of it on my close up. And I do want to get better at having the stamina for that. But Matthew Modine, best team partner I've worked with. Jamie Campbell Bower is similar. We didn't have like an outright scene together. However, same thing in the electrocution scene. The camera wasn't on him. He still chose to be in the room, which you don't have to do as an actor. You don't have to stay in the room if you're not on camera. He then gave me this death glare that I could sense in the corner of my eye, which again, he's not on camera. He doesn't have to look at me like I'm his next meal, but he did that because both him and Matthew did as much as they could to make sure that I was equipped with everything that I need. And then you meet JB and he's this like super sweet, mild mannered British guy, and he's just like, "Oh yeah, yeah, great job." But he just kind of keeps to himself. It's very like, "Oh yeah, I'm here when I need to be," and he's very sweet, and it's just completely different from Vecna, obviously. Um, and yeah, I think what I appreciated about Millie is that when I worked with her, she always went above and beyond to make everyone feel like valued. Like she remembered everyone's name on set. In between takes, she would like play with the other kid numbers. Like she would just play with them in between takes while we were getting the next shot set up. And I learned a lot of techniques from her about like getting your body into the stakes of the scene. What she's really good at is because her character 11 until obviously season 3 and 4 doesn't really talk a whole lot. The first 2 seasons, she was entirely like facial expressions and body movement. And because of that, I think she's really perfected the art of getting the adrenaline into her body and then trusting it to reach her brain without her trying to force it. So she'll do things like screaming right before an intense scene. And she warns everybody. That's like the key is don't just scream out of nowhere because then your audio guys will despise you. But she lets them know, hey guys, I'm about to scream. Audio guys, take your headphones off. Then she does it. They put the headphones back on. She runs into the room, and now she's at that like level 10 in terms of intensity. She also does something called a series, which I use and I teach all the time, where you basically do the same chunk of the scene 3 times in a row so that you can ramp into the adrenaline of the scene with each take instead of trying to snap your fingers and just start at a 10. And I used that in my electrocution scene as well. I wouldn't have known to ask for that if I didn't see Millie ask for that first. And then I don't think I would get nearly as many positive comments as I did about the electrocution scene because the reason I needed the series is I just wasn't getting there beforehand. I wasn't getting there because I would almost be there and then it'd be cut. Here are some notes, set everything back up again. Then you try to get back into the zone. And so the series really helped me like actually focus on the scene, not have any distractions, build into that intensity. Um, and yeah, I think that scene might have sucked if I wasn't able to learn from Millie in all of the weeks beforehand.
Deleted scenes. Was there any deleted scenes, man, that you did you film anything that didn't end up making it?
No, no,
No, everything made it? That's awesome.
they're very tight with their scripts. They're really good about making sure if it's in the final script, it's too important to cut. Um, they also only gave me the scenes that I was a part of. And I will say where it's maybe different is that my entire character arc was meant to set up Vecna. And so
Mhm.
I kind of intuitively knew as we were filming, oh, this is going to be way too important for them to cut. It's literally both 11 and Vecna's background at the exact same time. And so
Mhm.
every scene was necessary, every scene was needed. And I think especially my character was kind of meant to serve as a foil to Angela's character in like regular Hawkins High, where you have like the traditional 80s bully and Angela that she experiences in whatever the show fourth season technically starts, in antithesis to like the first bully, which is me back in Hawkins Lab, which is a little bit more of the dark, intense kind of bully type. So no, everything stayed in.
That's awesome. So, was it your 24th birthday that you went and filmed a short film in 24 hours that was just like you and some friends, huh?
Yes, that was psychotic. Basically, it was kind of the same thing where I realized it had been a while since I was like filming stuff myself. Because kind of like, you start booking professional work, you start auditioning for a lot of bigger projects, and then you become a little bit like precious about what you decide to act in, which is good. You don't want to go do just terrible projects or anything like that. But I realized that I was caring a little bit too much about that. I was like kind of stuck and stagnant. The strikes had just happened. I went from like the most momentum of my career, almost booking some of the biggest roles I'd ever booked. I even booked a huge role that ended up getting scrapped and ended up not being able to do that. But I went from like the highest point of my career, getting the closest to the biggest roles, and then the strike happened, and then everything kind of slowed down, and then I kind of lost all of the momentum that I had, and so I was kind of stuck. And I decided for my 24th birthday, it was really important to me for year 24 to be a year of finding my momentum again. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to make an entire short film in 24 hours. Stop making excuses, stop being afraid to, put myself out there, make my own opportunities. And literally, it was me and 3 other people that filmed the entire thing completely by ourselves. And a lot of the scenes was just me filming everything myself. So the only scenes where we had a somewhat big crew was opening scene of that between me and Sam. We had basically me, her, We had my best friend Nick Hampshire as our cinematographer, and then we had my other best friend Veronica Clayton as like our boom operator and script soup. So basically, two crew members that shot that scene. Everything else, I was the cinematographer, the director, the gaffer, I was the editor, the colorist, the sound designer. I literally did every other part of the film almost by myself. Even the scene between me and Dr. Burton, which is me and Veronica, it was just me. Like I filmed it myself. She was my scene partner. I set up all the lighting. I set up the settings. I got all the shots. So literally almost that entire thing we made with just like 1 to 2 people at a time, with the exception of a couple of scenes where we had 4 people total. And is it perfect? No. But the fact that we did it in 24 hours with 4 people, I'm like, I'm not allowed to give myself an excuse that I can't do something again if I could do that in only a single day with only a couple of people. And yeah, it was because it was a character very special and important to me. It's been made in a movie before, but it originally is a book called The Perks of Being a Wallflower. The whole story revolves around Charlie, who is afraid to participate. And so he tends to live life on the sidelines and watch things happen instead of engaging and involving himself. And that's very much so how I felt. I very much felt like I said earlier, I was stagnant. I was kind of watching life happen. I wasn't participating. I wasn't making things myself. I was just kind of looking. And I really wanted to make this film as like a reminder that my 24th year, I'm going to participate. I'm going to involve myself. I'm going to actually make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And that's kind of why I started my YouTube channel. That's why I opened up my school community, and everything that's kind of come from there came because I decided I'm done waiting for people outside of me. And yeah.
I can't imagine it would be hard to be on the biggest show ever that's going to stay forever and wanting. I live for creativity, but I could understand why it gets like hard and precious to be like, I don't want to be anything, but I loved the short film you did, and I love seeing the footage of just you and a handful of people doing it. And it's even I didn't know, I saw obviously that you were probably directing it. Keep on being creative, man. That was amazing, and it was good. It was really good, and I hope you just keep on doing this, man. And your YouTube channel is really good. I watch it. That's how that's how we're talking right now. And your school thing, I'm gonna have to check out your school thing. I'll have links to all your stuff in the description, man. Your school, your YouTube channel, that short film that we're talking about. And is there anything that you want to end on your side?
Oh gosh, I think the only thing I will end on is going to be a little bit of a soapbox, but I'll keep it very short, which is just I want to encourage anyone listening to this to know that we're kind of shifting into an indie landscape. I think that the studio system is, unless it really adapts, it's like slowly becoming harder and harder for the studio system to be sustainable because they're spending just crazy budgets making sequels and remakes. And I think people are tired of it. And I think that the indie space is about to become a lot more mainstream than it used to be. And I say all of that to encourage people to know that, like, if you decide that you want to put in the work and put in the effort, we're getting to a place where that will be rewarded financially. So I say that to encourage people, where if they feel like, oh, I'm in a small town, or I'm not in a major film hub, or oh, I don't have this look, or I don't have this amount of money, like, if you have the drive to make stuff happen, I think the space will be there for you as we move forward. And specifically with acting, I think that I'm trying to kind of be someone that uses my platform to show how much is possible when it comes to creating stuff on your own. That's part of why I made my 24-hour film, right? by myself is I really want actors to stop giving themselves limiting beliefs. I want them to stop making excuses for why they are where they're at. Because if they just put in a little bit of muscle work, if they just put in a little bit of elbow grease, they'd get further than they think they are. And I'll end off with this too, since it is January. Your goals do not matter. I know this sounds weird, but goals literally mean nothing without action. So instead of focusing on your goals, focus on what is worthy of my time and spend time there. If you want to be a better actor, don't set the goal of, ooh, let me go win an Oscar, because it doesn't matter if you're not acting. So if you want to be a better actor, if you want to have better opportunities, just act more. Spend more hours acting, spend more hours learning. If you want to be a better, spouse, spend more time with your spouse. If you want to be a better, son, spend more time with your parents. It's as simple as knowing your time dictates your year. How 2025 looks has nothing to do with your goals and everything to do about where you allocate your hours. And as everyone says, everyone has the same number of hours. So if you're not where you want to be, it's time for you to get real with, are you spending your hours where you should be? And if you're not, time to get some wiggle room in order. But I just want to leave people with that, because I think at the start of the year, everyone's like, I need to set all of these goals and I'm going to accomplish all of this by the end of the year. That they don't actually spend time, doing the work. They feel the dopamine of, okay, I set a list. I planned to do something, but plans don't make productivity. They just they delay it. So
Yep. Do what you want, do what you love. That's what I always say, you know.
hmm,
Oh
exactly.
man, I appreciate you, man.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me. I hope you have the best of luck with all of your future projects and the podcast. And I'm excited I got to share some of my journey with you today.
Yeah, me too, man.